Okay, and we are live. Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining the Jefferson Educational Society's digital program, Co-working in Erie, a case study of the economic impact of Radius CoWork and the future of Erie County. I'm Raven Clark, Satellite Program Coordinator at the Jefferson. Folks, as we begin today's event, I'd like to remind everyone tuning in that we're taking your questions via the comment section on Facebook. If you have any questions, please share it there and we'll work our way through as many questions from you as we can. I'd like to thank our speaker today, Jessica Taylor, a Raimy Fellow Graduate and Jefferson Civic Leadership Academy alum, for presenting her research findings today. I'd also like to thank Dr. Andrew Roth for moderating the conversation with me. Dr. Roth is a Jefferson Scholar in Residence focusing on leadership, media, and social studies. He designed, built, and facilitates the Raimy Fellowship Program, which was launched in 2018. He is the author of more than 100 book notes, a superb weekly publication series that has gained traction beyond our county limits. I'd like to note here his accomplished career in academics, from lecturing to leading, as he taught various courses on leadership before going on to serve in administrations in Erie, to lead Notre Dame College in Cleveland as its president and president emeritus, and at St. Bonaventure University as interim president. With this, I'd like to hand it over to you, Dr. Roth, to introduce our speaker in the program.
Thank you very much, Raven. And welcome everyone to, I believe this is our fifth and final Raimy Fellow presentation of the year. Today's presenter, Jessica Taylor, is going to speak on the economic impact of co-working spaces, particularly focusing on Radius CoWork in Erie. Her colleagues prior to this, we've had Corrine Thomas on the potential for high-speed rail in Erie. Jake Marsh did, working with Generation Z. Sarah Provencio did a very useful and very important legal presentation on navigating the legalities of transitioning gender. Susanna Faulkner did a very good presentation on instituting a minimal basic income program in Erie County, and I'm really anxious and really excited to hear what Jessica has to say about the value of co-working spaces. Jessica is a native of Erie, Pennsylvania, and a graduate of Penn State University's College of Communications, where she earned a BA in film and video. She launched Menage Erie Studio in 2013 as a way to turn her passion for filmmaking into a career, a lifelong career. Around Erie, she's known for her entrepreneurship and community development advocacy, and was featured as one of the Erie Readers 40 Under 40 in 2017. The success of her business enterprise in the wake of Erie's Renaissance has caught the eye of major media outlets such as NPR. In 2017, Jessica produced Rust Belt New Americans, a film about the refugee experience, which has won several awards at film festivals nationwide. As Jessica says, it's important to her to integrate what I do professionally with my place in the community. My goal with Menage Erie is to produce content that makes an impact. And talking about the importance of the economic development importance of co-working spaces is very important for the future of Erie. Jessica may touch on this in her presentation, but if I'm not mistaken, I recall one of the more popular media magazines, it was either Wired or Fast Times, talked about how during the pandemic, Erie actually made a list of the top 10 places in the nation to move to because of its low cost of living and its high ability to work from home or work remotely. And so all of that portends positively for the future, but for a much more sophisticated explanation of all of this, let's now turn our attention to Jessica.
Thank you, Dr. Roth and Raven. So as they mentioned, my name is Jessica Taylor, and I'm here with my special guest host, Sean Fedorko, co-founder of Radius CoWork, and we are currently live from Radius CoWork's Triana conference room. So yeah, just to give a brief introduction to the topic, the way that people have been working has vastly shifted, particularly in the last 10 years. And the pandemic really accelerated those trends. So leading up to the pandemic, we were seeing a shift of people looking for remote work, hybrid working, and specifically in Erie, freelance and startup culture. Yeah, Sean, is there anything you had to add to that you've seen?
No, that's a good summary.
Okay. So, and there, Radius CoWork is going to be the example that we focus on during this presentation, but there have been other organizations and are other organizations around Erie who use a similar model to co-working. And you can think of the idea of co-working as sort of like a gym membership for businesses or other collaborative efforts. So it allows people to maintain a membership and be able to utilize the facility and resources without having to pay for a whole brick and mortar location or all the amenities that would go into creating a space like that. So some of these other organizations you might be familiar with around Erie, including PACA, which is an arts-focused collaborative space, Thrive Therapy Space, which is a shared space between counselors and therapists, and a few more. And especially since the pandemic, there is a high demand and shift towards people who want to create a more balanced work-life experience within their lives. And some of the research that we're going to go over here shows that it is actually healthier for people to be able to live this way. And spaces like Radius allow people to have that almost in-between balance where you can, have a remote job and work from home, but days where you do want to get out of the house or you want to have a little bit more home, work separation, you can go to a space like that and have that in your life. So the research that I'm going to talk about and some of the statistics comes from the Future Forum Pulse survey. And starting in June 2020, Future Forum began surveying thousands of workers and managers globally on a quarterly basis. So the data that we're going to go over is actually from this last quarter, I believe from April. And so they've surveyed over 10,000 knowledge workers across the US, Australia, France, Germany, Japan, and the UK. Some of the key findings are that return to office policies, which are now being implemented since the pandemic. A lot of people went remote during the pandemic, and now some companies are requiring those employees to come back to work. So this data is reflective of some of the responses from these knowledge workers having to go back into the office. And they have noticed that it has negatively impacted the employee experience scores. So people are reporting that their overall well-being is less than before, when they were able to have full control over their schedules from working from home or in a hybrid model. So more than a third of knowledge workers have reverted to working from home to the office 5 days a week. And that is, the greatest number since they began surveying back in June of 2020. Work-life balance dropped 17% quarter over quarter as people started having to go back into the office. And work-related stress and anxiety is at its all-time worst since the surveying began. So to me, that, you can almost deduce that it is creating even more stress, having shifted from people being able to know what working from home is like to now having to go back to the office. It is overall not a great experience for them. So this just goes over, breaks it down a little bit further, showing some more metrics like productivity, ability to focus, access to resource, flexibility, etc. And as you can see, that in every area, scores have dropped since people have had to go back to work. So fully in-person workers are the least happy based off of this data. So they have the lowest employee experience scores and show the steepest declines on average over the previous quarter. So as you can see, there's drops slightly drops in all the areas, but the fully in-person workers have the highest drop. So, and then the other big thing to consider is this is affecting more non-executive workers versus executives. So even though there is a decline in both areas between executives and non-executives, this is affecting the non-executive workers way more, because generally executives have some control over their schedule or have the privilege of being able to have some flexibility with their work-life balance, whereas non-executives tend to be managed more and therefore required to do more, that they have less control over their own schedules. So knowledge workers who say they have little to no ability to set their own hours report that they are 2.6 times more likely to definitely look for a new job in the next year compared to those with moderate schedule flexibility. So this is something that I think big companies really need to consider, and I mean any company really, is that now that there are so many more remote options out there, if they want to retain their talent and their workers, they need to seriously consider some of this data and maybe implementing, at the very least, hybrid model schedules for their employees that allow them to have the flexibility with their life, because otherwise they're just going to go look for a new job, and those jobs are out there right now. So another finding is that particularly women, people of color, and specifically working parents, especially mothers, they are mostly impacted by this return to work period. I mean, during the pandemics especially, and working mothers were then allowed to have the flexibility with their schedule to have time with their kids and be able to, at the time when daycares and things were closed, mothers were able to actually care for their kids. And I think that in the day and age where women are looking to, start families and things like that, they, having a hybrid model or remote model is giving women more of a chance to not have to choose between having a family and having a career. And the desire for flexibility remains the strongest among underrepresented groups, including Asian American, Hispanic, Latinx, Black, and white as well. And here's a little bit more specific data about working mothers. Obviously this also affects working fathers as well. But as you can see, based on these reports, it affects women, working mothers, a lot higher than working fathers. But both of those are up from the beginning of the surveying period. And parents are most concerned about proximity bias. So the percentage of respondents who say I'm concerned that working remotely or most or all of the time is negatively affecting my career trajectory. There's a bias between parents who I don't know how we out here.
So referred to as presenteeism. Those who can actually be physically present in an office simply get recognized more frequently for their work because their work is more easily observable by management. So parents are particularly concerned because their commitment to childcare frequently takes them out of the physical office.
Mm-hmm. Well said, Sean. Thank you. So that brings us to our case study, and we chose to utilize Radius CoWork as part of this presentation because it represents a very good model of how you can balance a lot of these things, and also how it positively impacts the economy in Erie as well. So Sean, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to start Radius?
Sure. So I'm Sean Fedorko. I'm one of the founding members of Radius CoWork. We got started about 7 years ago. I had come back to the city on a 6-month contract and assumed I would work in the city's co-working space. I had worked in co-working spaces in DC and thought these were just staples of every city. Didn't find one here, but found a community of people who shared a common problem, one I had. I didn't want to work alone. I wanted people to share ideas with. I wanted people to collaborate with, to simply enjoy my days with as professional collaborators. And so about a dozen of us had come together and decided to start our own space. And we thought maybe if we got to about 2 dozen, it would be pretty phenomenal. I've stayed building that space ever since. We're now up to 170 members in a 24/7 space. So it's really been quite a delight for me to find such a large community here at Radius.
Yeah, and I thank you for starting it, because I would not have started my business or been as successful with starting my business without having joined a place like Radius CoWork. And as Andy mentioned, I run a video production studio, and we started from very, very small, nothing, to now we actually have our own location, and I work with my husband, sister-in-law, and our friend Greg. So a lot of that was possible by joining something like Radius CoWork to help us with the struggles of starting up a business.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that in the city of Erie, if you wanted to find a location at any given point of any given day where there were graphic designers and attorneys, web developers and software developers, entrepreneurs and freelancers, there is only one place that you can go, and that's Radius CoWork. And you walk in at any time, you'll find people that you could meet, collaborate with, and find both encouragement from, as well as solutions from, and even potential partners.
Yeah, and I think that for specifically a city of Erie size, this was almost like a perfect scenario of events that allowed you to locate right in the heart of the city. This is close to all the restaurants and and bars and other places that people want to be able to enjoy while they're in the city. But by locating the co-working space there, a lot of the members are constantly going and patronizing all of these other places. And just a little bit about Radius. You mentioned you're up to 100. Is this number even accurate today from when I made this?
It's hard to tell. It changes pretty frequently, but you're absolutely right. We do bring dozens of people downtown every day, several hundred between our members and their guests every week. And the space has really grown. So, you've got some great numbers here. We started initially with about 2,000 square feet, and we've grown to 10,000. We started initially about 6 hours a day that you could stop in and work here. And now we've grown to be a 24/7, 365 facility. It's hard to pin down how many members we have on any given day. Right now, it may be closer to, I think, 165, 170. In the last month, we've seen a lot of people graduate and join from the local universities, or start their own projects and add some new people to their team. But we've got over 200 alumni, people who have come through the co-working space and then grown out and started their own locations, much as Menagerie has.
So just breaking that down a little bit. So as far as the types of members or the types of people that are joining, we see that the majority are small business owners, and then we've got almost a similar amount that would be full-time remote workers and freelancers and consultants. So how did the pandemic affect Radius, and then have you seen a shift of people now joining prior?
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, we were pushing pretty hard for several years to grow the remote worker base of the city of Erie. The fact is that someone working in Erie, might be earning $65,000, but if they took a similar job working remote for a company out of a larger metropolitan area, they might, get a slight bump in their title and responsibilities, but they would get a significant bump in their compensation because, the market in New York City for a similar career might be paying $120,000. And so we thought that one of the best ways to grow the economic health of the city of Erie was to take our extraordinarily skilled citizens who lived here and loved living here and turn them into net importers of income into the community and export our knowledge and talent to other places in the nation and the world. So we have been focused on remote workers for a while, but during the pandemic, we saw that explode. As the opportunity for remote work dramatically increased, as all companies nearly everywhere learned how to shift their office workers into remote work jobs, and many in the city of Erie found new opportunities in that growth phase. But also, many people left the jobs that they had and decided that in that period of change, there was a lot of opportunity. Opportunity in the marketplace generally, but opportunity for them personally to launch their own businesses, to go freelance, or because their kids weren't in school, to find a healthier blend of part-time work that they controlled and being a part-time or full-time parent, which was now not only a responsibility they appreciated, but one they were really required to provide as the change in childcare services made daily childcare more difficult. So we saw a lot of transformation, a shift toward not only more remote work, but also more people starting to take more control over the nature of their professional career generally, and finding a community that would support both of those changes in the way that they work day to day.
Yeah, and I think that some of that is also, it's reflective in the types of memberships that people possess, because you offer everything from private offices to dedicated desks, in which members can join, and then they have these dedicated spaces that they will always know that they can come to. But it seems like your most popular types of memberships are these Nomad and Casual and Flex, and so to me this is symbolic of, even in this sense, people just want the flexibility to, be able to ebb and flow or come and go.
Yeah, it really captures two things. One, that many people are in states of transition. Co-working spaces are fantastic transition spaces because they're ripe with resources, but also defined by flexibility. And so people who are in transition have either uncommon needs or frequently changing needs. And we really are able to meet those needs as they evolve. But it's also the case that people are looking for connection, and connection doesn't necessarily mean constant 9 to 5, Monday through Friday connection in a physical space. They might only need that connection online, and our online engagement is robust. A lot of people communicate there frequently, but also, occasional. I might only need to come in once a week in order to make the connections that I need to solve my problems or access the resources I need to work. And so while some people, of course, have a private office, you can see it's only a tiny minority. The vast majority are using some other kind of flexible opportunity to connect to the resources and the people here.
So this is just a look of some of the space. Now, one question I'm going to have that I think, some people out there might be thinking right now is the only association they have with co-working is WeWork.
Yeah.
And that did not end great for them. So can you just give a quick brief thing about why Radius model is different than like the WeWork model?
Yeah, when we say co-working, it's kind of like saying the word restaurant. You have no idea what the food is or what the price is or what the decor is. You just know that you're maybe going to eat. Well, co-working is just as broad. At one end, you have indie spaces, small, unique, very customized, might even have small communities. And at the other end, you have large corporate co-working, where they're largely solving real estate problems in real estate scarce markets like Manhattan. And Radius is very much in the indie co-working end of the spectrum. We are founded and crafted by our members. We're not trying to scale to multiple communities. Our entire brand is customizing our service and our environment unique to the city of Erie's needs. We are all people who are part of and care about this local community, and that means we have a very unique flavor. So while you may see co-working in the news and they often talk about the large industrial institutions, it's kind of like hearing about Burger King being a little bit irrelevant for those who know, like Caleo's, right? A small Italian restaurant here in the city of Erie, completely unique with its own history to our local community. Radius is much more like a small local mom and pop restaurant than like the large corporate chains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And as you mentioned, really what the co-working space is the members and what the members choose to make it. So for example, these are some of the programs that were started and continue to run that are all member ran and based. And so even though you were the one that, got the, created the concept here in Erie and got the, wheels turning, at this point, it's a well-oiled machine to the point where, people can come in and they can create the types of programs they want to see?
Yeah, what we really do is facilitate what our members are trying to achieve. So we're a platform for people to collectively act. We started a whole bunch of programming like Freelance Erie, which is a new annual conference to help freelancers get started and grow in the city. We host show and tells where we teach the content that people most need in our community when they need it. So we don't have an annual forecast of programming. We don't know what people will need to learn until they start encountering problems. We co-organize the Erie Day of Code, the city's only technology and software development conference that's attracted hundreds into the community. And even business masterminds between the business owners who are members of our space. So really what we try to do is identify the challenges people are running into, what problems they share, and then collectively to build a solution.
Yeah, and so, you know, initially when I was putting this presentation together and initially talking to you, our goal was to try to measure the economic impact of a space like Radius. But it is we have found it is nearly impossible because it is so anecdotal. And so that is why we've chosen to, you know, walk people through some of the milestones that Radius has achieved, but then we will talk about what some of the members themselves have achieved. So so why don't you know, walk me through a little bit of Radius's history?
Sure. So 2015, we got started with a dozen members who had decided to join the space together. And like I said, we thought if another dozen joined us, that would be pretty cool. You know, opening day, we have our first guy come walking in holding a monitor under each arm and join us. And shortly thereafter, we kind of hit that 25 member mark. And within a year, we were already doubling our space, adding additional space across the hall in order to accommodate the growth and the daily users that we were seeing. You know, roughly our second year, we hired our first employees, someone to help manage the community, serve the members. Our community organizers literally organize the physical space and keep everything running, but they also are organizers of the events and the programming that our members need. In January of 2018, we added a whole new wing of the floor. We're on the 9th floor of the Renaissance Center, and we expanded to add not only a quiet work library, tech library, book library, but also adding a communal lounge, team rooms where small and growing teams could share space in private offices.
And I think that's actually an interesting thing to touch on is I think sometimes people might associate a co-working space as, well, how am I going to get any work done if I'm always, you know, going to be chatting with somebody, or, you know, so there's spaces here then that allow for people to be able to step away and
absolutely. Because we serve an entire community's needs, the breadth of those needs have to be covered. Some people require a dedicated, focused space. Some want to work in a bustling area with lots of inspiration, and some want to work in a quiet space that's very focused. Others need to work with a team, and some will work independently. Some are on calls, and some need to take physical in-person meetings. And so we build space that accommodates all of those needs.
So, and kind of along the same timeline, we've all seen what some of the members have done, and, you know, whether or not some of you are even aware that a lot of these places either, you know, started or utilized Radius's resources to help get their businesses started. I already told you a little bit about myself and my business, but you might be familiar with some of the other businesses such as, you know, Ember and Forge and Room 33, Gone Local, Whitethorn Games. You know, what can you say a little bit about that and what that feels like to see, almost like, you know, your fledglings go out to the community?
Yeah, there's no badge at the door of a business that grew out of Radius, but many of those that you may have seen in the city have either come out of our space or are current members. Many are. So Menagerie, of course, was here and has used our space even today as we broadcast to speak to you. Hannah Kirby, who built Ember and Forge, did all the design work and coordinated with many of our members to build her space from here at Radius, and she's still a member today. Room 33, Rebecca Stein, a member of Radius. Ethos Copywriting, Matt Flowers, who was recently part of the JCLA cohort, still runs Ethos Copywriting from here at Radius in one of our team rooms, serving many local businesses who need writing services. You may have seen the Secure Erie Accelerator from the Erie Innovation District, now at the Erie Regional Chamber. Many of the businesses that they attract choose to stay in Erie, and they choose to stay in Erie by moving their operations over to Radius after the accelerator completes, including City Grows and Simple Sense. Apex Drop, which is an influencer marketing company, has grown to over 23 employees. They got their start at Radius, got their first office, first location, and in fact, their CEO has rejoined Radius now that his company has gone remote and he no longer needs a physical office. Gone local, Kristen Santiago, a member here at Radius, collaborating with our members very often. Whitethorn Games just rebuilt the building directly behind local Eat and Pour, which used to be 1201. And in fact, they're outgrowing their space, and he's going to relocate the next 5 to 15 employees that they hire back at Radius until they can identify a larger building. Ghost Creative, a software development agency, now on its 5th employee here and growing, and even a company working in industrial design, Steel Toe Consulting, here building, collaborating with many of our members on software development, marketing, and business planning. So these are only a handful of the companies, but many companies that you may see in Erie are members benefiting from participating in a co-working community so that they can help one another grow and succeed.
Well, and to me, it really is it's that ripple effect of having someone planting the seed here and then getting to see it grow, and I think that a lot is to be said that has attributed to growing some of the places downtown, because people who, including myself, who started out of here, decided not to go too far once we grew out of this space. We wanted to stay close enough to be connected into the community here. And so, and with that said, I think that one of the best ways to really get to know the concept and the space is to hear from some of the members themselves. So I went around and I interviewed three members, one in which is started her own business out of here and has her location located here, a remote worker who works for a larger company and decides to work out of here, and then also Matt White from Whitethorn Digital, who went on to grow his business out of here. So
co-working is great.
It definitely helps make you more sane as an entrepreneur too.
When I came back, I actually thought I was pretty much just making a company in my basement.
When I first started working here, being able to see everyone in their professions and get advice and get the help, and then being able to trade my skills and knowledge in return was awesome.
So I feel like it provides people with the resources to working remote.
Working remotely lets me have the freedom to think by myself on my own, but also I have a team of people that I still can rely on.
I think it gives a level of, professionalism, because most freelancers like me would work out of their house.
So I think it solves the logistical problem, but it also solves a community problem, right? Because there's no other single aggregator of remote workers, freelancers, things like that, which definitely are used to, these people are used to a different economy than their parents and grandparents.
I was able to, find a job where I can have this lifestyle of being able to be home and being able to work remotely and still be able to have the pay of working in a major city.
It's quality, right? It's life quality. And that's one of the reasons that it's so easy for us to drive in people. As a company, we offer the kind of life that you would get at a company in California, Seattle, whatever, when it's in Erie.
I feel that sense of there's roots here.
I mean, I'm no longer working for for money. I'm working for my quality of life, for sure.
The sort of silver lining of that is it means the work has to change completely, the way we think about work, the way we think about physical space, the way we think about what our 9 to 5 means.
People here want to see others succeed. There's just that really great community that's I feel unlike any other workplace.
This whole new change of being able to work wherever you want is really, I think, going to drive a lot of people to find smaller places in smaller cities to live that have a lot to do. And I feel like Erie fits just perfectly within that market.
So yeah, as you can see, that's the broad strokes, I think, of the overall concept of having the freedom to start something on your own or work remotely. And I think that spaces that like Radius that are based off of a co-working model allow these other people and businesses that might, kind of feel like they're floundering alone to be able to work together, be together, and that creates kind of a force to be reckoned with, so to speak, because it empowers people. So yeah, and so I think that based on what you guys have built here, it really would be really great for Erie if more spaces like this continue to exist and grow, because you can see there's been a lot of impact just in the last 7-8 years.
Well, and more of those spaces are starting. This is not a single business solution. It's a model that many could apply. It's the idea that we're stronger when we cooperate than when we compete, and it allows us to use our resources more efficiently, but it also allows us to be more fulfilled in our work. So Thrive Therapy Space is a good example. Thrive Therapy Space in the city of Erie is a co-working space, but it's built for therapists and other wellness professionals because they have HIPAA compliant necessities that the typical co-working space can't accommodate. They have a different kind of community need that they all share a need for. And so that group who had shared needs came together. They shared a need for space, but they also share needs for knowledge, skills, training, encouragement. And so as they coordinate the solution to all of those needs, the costs come down, the sense of fulfillment of achieving something together goes up, and we build not only robust economic solutions, but we build robust social solutions.
Well, and talking about Erie in particular, with the rise of people looking for remote jobs and people especially looking to either buy a house or property, why do you think that spaces like this would be beneficial for Erie to market themselves almost as a remote base for people?
Yeah, because anybody relocating to a community is going to need a resource like this. So we attract a lot of people who have just come to the city. Where will I find my first professional peers? If I'm a young parent, where will I find the first parents who I'll learn from and share my joys and challenges with, but also whose kids my kids will play with? They come join a co-working space. So people will need solutions to where and how they'll work, but they'll also need solutions to who they will spend their time with and how they will find their first community in their new home. And so telling people before they come here while they're looking, hey, we're a community uniquely capable. We're uniquely well situated to do this, whether you want to join a collective in the arts, a collective in mental wellness, a collective in maker spaces, or a collective in a professional office.
Well, I want to thank you, Sean, for being a part of this program. I think we have a little bit of time if there are any questions, but otherwise I will hand it back over to Dr. Roth.
Jessica and Sean, I've got a couple of questions. We do have, I'm looking over here, we don't have a viewer question yet, but we have several comments. It strikes me that there are two really positive community effects to co-working spaces that are economic drivers. The idea of how does a co-working space, Radius in this particular instance, but you mentioned there are others in Erie in the arts and wellness and in a couple of other areas. The two effects, I think most people don't understand necessarily, but are aware of what I'll call the Beehive Effect. And I think, Sean, most people in Erie who do not have direct experience of Radius think of it as a place where entrepreneurs who maybe do not have the resources to have an independent spot can find a place to begin a business and grow it and then eventually outgrow you, although some of them continue to function there. I think that idea is pretty well, or pretty, I think most people get that. They may not understand it, but they get that. But it seems to me there's a real opportunity, not only for you specifically, but for Erie, if that factoid that I mentioned at the beginning, that I can't remember the magazine, Wired or Fast Times or one of those magazines, rated Erie as one of the 10 best places in the nation to work remotely. And there is a question in here. I'm not just rambling. The question I have is, how can you leverage that worker dissatisfaction that Jessica documented at the front end? And what we have heard repeatedly, that coming out of the pandemic, one of the things we've discovered is the technology we're using right now, for example. How do you leverage that so that you could encourage a person who's living, let's say, in somewhere in Manhattan or its environs, but they are now no longer in their 20s or even 30s, but they have a family and they have the ability to work remotely. How can we put all of that together to merchandise living in Erie in order to exploit that factoid that we mentioned? I think there's a real opportunity here, just not only for your firm, but to create an environment in Erie that nurtures firms like yours that then becomes a magnet. Because it seems to me the kinds of things you do provides the two benefits that people want that want to work remotely. People want to work remotely because they like the autonomy and the flexibility of their schedules. But what they don't like about working remotely is that it's remote. So that if someone who is, and this would be particularly true, I think, in the information, now I'm probably under the third or fourth question, so I'm going to stop here in a minute and let you try to chew on this. So somebody who works, who works in a profession that is in the information professions, and they're not literally making a physical product, but what they provide is their analytical, creative, whatever. Power. How do you, they can work anywhere, but how do you create an environment where they get the positive strokes of being in the office? I don't know what you do about the proximity bias. That's a question you'd have to figure out how you solve for people. But people get two satisfactions from jobs. One is material, they get paid. Sadly, for many people, that's the only satisfaction they get, and the rest of the things around the job they don't like. But then when they step back, they discover, oh, but there is one thing they like about the job is they like some of their co-workers, they like this, they like going, you know, the intangibles. Okay, I'm going to stop. I've asked you about 3 or 4 questions in there. How could that opportunity be leveraged?
Sure. So the last one I'll answer first, and I'll work my way backwards. You had said, how do you get that second benefit? You know, you get paid, but if you're remote, you could be lonely. You don't get the co-workers. That's where a co-working space steps in and says, yes, we all, of course, need our material well-being. We need to be paid for that, but we need our emotional and psychological well-being satisfied as well. And if we're remote, we get to choose the community we spend time with if we have communities that we can participate in. And so Radius CoWork steps in to say, you know, a co-working community will let you pick the people you work with. You have different communities you could join. You find the ones that you appreciate the most, the places where you feel welcome and enjoy participating. And that is actually an advantage over a business. A business, your boss tells you who you'll work with, right? This is your team. You'll sit with them. You'll work with them. You don't have a choice. When you join a co-working community, you have a choice. You can work with those people or not those people. You can join this location or that location. You can be there one day a week. You can be there every day of the week. And so it really puts the control over the satisfaction of who you spend time with back into the individual. So I think that's something to market. But then working backwards, your question had been.
You use the phrase robust social solutions. And while you were talking and I'm listening to you, and we do have 2 questions now from the audience. So I'm going to just make an observation. What it seems to me for a knowledge worker who can work remotely, but who doesn't want to spend all their life, like right now, it happens to be, I don't know, you can see behind, it happens to be actually a very nice room and I'm looking out over a pond and a golf course. But after a while, even this very nice room looking out over a pond and a golf course, you want to go talk to someone. So you have the cliched idea, the knowledge worker with their laptop, they go and sit in the coffee shop. You can create a kind of coffee shop environment on steroids where all of the social perks that someone derives from a job you have, and plus, when you go to a coffee shop, you're kind of at the mercy of who shows up. But if you have a co-work space like you've created, you have high quality people all around you. And so you can create a community. And I think you mentioned, you don't just necessarily have to have an office, you can have a desk.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Somebody could rent a desk from you and come in 2 days a week. And what they're really looking for is the interaction.
And then you can convince your friends with, who are starting businesses to join as well, and bring them into
Let
the
me
city.
pass on a question. Actually, Jake Marsh, who was one of our Raimies this week, asks, what do you think are the most critical things that Erie lacks that would anchor people in new businesses in Erie, or bring them, or attract them to Erie?
I think that it's something that we're working on. And I think Erie is at a very pivotal point in how the leaders in our community decide to continue to develop what type of city Erie is going to become. You kind of put this earlier, like, people are in a transitional phase right now, so is our city. And I think that the best thing that Erie can do is actually look towards other cities of similar size who have gone down one path or the other, whether they decided to develop, their tourist economy or their freelance economy and their startup culture, or things like that, and then start to, see, well, what does Erie have? What can we invest in that already exists here? So we're not just reinventing the wheel. And also, kind of decide what kind of community do we really want to see? And what is your thought on that?
Yeah, so Jake Marsh, who's asked this question, of course, also a member of Radius. What would anchor people, bring them and anchor people to Erie, especially new businesses? People, it depends a little bit on who you want to attract. So one of the things I think Erie has going for it is it's not Seattle, it's not Boston. It
never will be.
It never will be, and it doesn't need to be. I think of those as finished cities. If you want to enjoy everything a city could possibly have, Seattle has it. It has every kind of brewery, it has every kind of entertainment venue, it has every kind of place that you could live. It's a city that people who want to enjoy full, robust, beautiful cities can go enjoy, but it's not a city for builders because it has everything. The building is not new, is not extraordinarily important. It's not filling a critical niche. I came back from DC. There were a dozen co-working spaces in DC. There was no reason to open a new one for me in DC. It existed. The solutions were already there. But when I come back to Erie, a city for builders, I have an incredibly important niche that I can fill by starting something new. And so to answer Jake's question, what anchors people here, I think it is attracting the builders, the people who want to create new and important things where they fill an important niche, because that fulfills the need to be creators in them. And then it's about accelerant. It's about helping them build and grow and do so quickly so that they're thriving in this environment. It is relative to some larger communities, has scarcer resources, but it does have resources, and it has untapped resources. It has uncoordinated resources. And the more sophisticated we become at tapping and coordinating those resources, the more accelerant we'll be able to give to the builders, which will attract and retain those who do come.
And one of the things, and not to sound too much like the Chamber of Commerce here, but Erie, in fact, does have a lot of the things those larger cities have in a much more human scale. I mean, we have a vibrant arts community. You have music of all types in Erie. Okay, so it snows. That's a different issue, but that's really only 2 months a year. Erie has all of those things. Another question is, and I think you touched on it, any thoughts or creative, I'm reading here. I got to excuse me for leaning forward to my other screen. Any thoughts or creative ideas to incentivize digital nomads to come to Erie? I think we just touched on some of those, but.
Yeah, and actually this is related to Jake's question and to your point, Andy. We have the total package, but we rarely communicate the total package. We market facets of the package, right? How great it might be to visit the peninsula. But when you think about the fact that we can offer baseball games and hockey games and zoos and water parks and affordable living of condos, apartments, or owning real estate, and you can visit state parks, and you can live on the water, and you can ski in the winter. As you start to complete this package, you could continue your education or be an educator at our local universities. Even I occasionally adjunct at Mercyhurst. You can participate in every aspect any community might offer, but at human scale. One of the greatest points I make to market our community is it is 15 minutes from my office to pulling a boat out of a dock down at the marina. 15 minutes. Where else can you do that in the city? Maybe Dubai.
And the other thing, I mean, we are starting to sound like the chamber. Erie is within 100 miles of 3 major cities and within 3 hours of one of the great cities in the world, which may sound like we're plugging other people, but there are very few locations in the country that can make that claim, that they're within 90 minutes of 3 major urban areas and all the things those urban areas have, and within an easy 2.5 to 3 hours of granted it's in another country, but one of the great cities in the world. And so I think you're on to something here. And the question is, how does the region market it?
Well, and there are organizations in Erie that are doing their part to try to market the city, you know, in their way. But my one criticism of things up until this point, and I do think there is a shift I've seen in the last few years, is that a lot of these organizations are siloed, and you know they are on their own mission to you know, market the city in its own way. And I just think that with a little bit more of a collaborative effort, or not reinventing the wheel, you know, rather than like, you know, it would be like the same as like, it's funny to me because, you know, the Starbucks downtown closed. Well, I don't think that's coincidence that Ember and Forge opened a few years ago and then Starbucks decided to move, because now, you know, there's a great local coffee shop there, but for years there was not a coffee shop downtown. And so, you know, so there's an example of that. I mean, you know, other factors as well as downtown development, you know, probably factored into that as well. But at the same time, now you know, there's already a coffee shop downtown. So don't try to reinvent the wheel a million times. What can people from outside of Erie who have lived in other places and seen things in cities that they liked, what can they bring back or bring to our area, and how can we support those things?
You know, one of the things, this is just a kind of off the wall thought, although we do have Ben Spagan, our vice president of the Jefferson here. I think Ben has got his tongue firmly in his cheek here. We were talking about Seattle and Boston. He just wants everyone to remember that Seattle lays claim to being the city from which the person who coined the internet meme, last person leaving, turn out the lights. So maybe not everything is perfect in Seattle. I don't know. But the interesting thing would be, how would you leverage recruiting people to come to Erie? And you were talking about breaking down silos, Jessica. I don't know, Sean, if you've ever thought of this, of partnering with local realtors or the local board of realtors as marketing Erie.
Yeah,
back to that factoid. Jessica, have I made that factoid up? I remember you and I talking about it, about Erie's one of the 10 best places to work remotely from.
Yeah, it was featured on a list. This was what, last year or the year? Yeah.
Okay, I didn't think I hallucinated.
But no, which I can share that link in the comments from that article, unless anybody else out there is familiar with it and wants to do that. But you know, just the cost of living ratio to income in Erie, it's hard to beat. And even though, you know, housing prices have gone up pretty much unanimously throughout the country, Erie still remains to be an affordable place to live. And so I think that alone would be, you know, very appealing for a remote worker who is just looking to have a home base, somewhere to come back to, somewhere where you don't have to compete for all the other resources out there, wait in long lines outside of their favorite bar, pay high covers just to, you know, go to see like a local band somewhere, you know, things like that. You know, Erie can offer a great home base, but then it also, has the potential to afford people the ability to travel, which is also something that I think is very desirable for, anyone, but also specifically the up and coming generations.
Yeah, and I like Ben's point. Ben, I think if I understand your meaning, Erie is not destined to be what we are today, right? We have this opportunity to become something incredible. Seattle was not always the shining city on the coast once people were leaving, but they've turned themselves around and frankly in short order, right? The scale of human lifetime. And so I think one of the things we have going for ourselves for marketing ourselves, and yes, that marketing needs to be more coordinated, but we're not the promise of a city that will one day come back. You kidding? Look around for the last decade. From the Erie Reader and Epic Web Studios getting started as kind of the young buck upstarts who are in tech and media and communications, writing challenging pieces or building new technology in the city, to the next generation who 5-10 years later are coming in and getting started downtown. I mean, for every year that Radius has been open, it's grown by nearly 20%, 30%. That doesn't happen in many cities. Since we've been here in the last 7 years, we've seen the baseball park rebuilt, the Civic Center rebuilt. We've seen Marquette move its headquarters downtown, VNet move its headquarters downtown, Erie Insurance build the largest building ever constructed in downtown. We've seen EDDC begin rebuilding entire blocks. I mean, this is a city on an extraordinary trajectory. And so once we communicate that the city has everything you'll have in another community, and the city is already on a tremendous trajectory, and we are eager for more builders to join us, and we will resource you once you arrive, not just with material resources, but with a community of peers who will help you grow. It's pretty hard to say no to living here.
And I do think, to echo that we do have to be conscious though about who we do let come in and build here, because if you just allow anybody to come in, it's, you don't want them to just, see, Erie's like growing fast. Let's just like build something real quick and fast and take our money and basically pillage our community. I think, Erie has to make sure that we are looking at ourselves as an asset and not to lower ourselves and to be like, hey, we get to pick and choose who gets to come build here and live here and grow here. So
yeah,
just let everybody in the door. This is more of a message to our community leaders.
Yeah, it's really a tremendous position to be in. We're really confident in how competitive we are as a community. And instead of begging for anyone to show up, we can be selective and strategic and build for a community that will construct a great place to live, not just in the short term, but for generations. We don't need quick money. We need smart money. We need to be a city that's robust against the effects of climate change. We need to be a city that's going to be a tremendous place to raise children 1 to 10 generations from now. We need to invest in our schools and our infrastructure as much as we seek quick economic growth. And so I think that's kind of the exciting responsibility we have as we start to market ourselves, is to say we're going to market ourselves to the right people who are committed to building something that's going to be beautiful, not just in our lifetimes, but for lifetimes to come. Yeah,
and to make sure that the people that have been living here through the good times and the bad in Erie can afford to stay and live here, and that we do not, allow our community to become unlivable for the people that have decided to stay here and build here.
Absolutely. Well, Raven, I think unless we have another question, we've got several comments, which I'm sure if you have Facebook up, you can see them. Thank you, Jessica, for an excellent presentation. Thank you, Sean, for your contribution. I really do think there is an opportunity in there, not just the Beehive Effect, but this opportunity of creating a magnet space for people who want to work remote, but also want to have it both ways. They want to have the ability to work remote, but occasionally to drop in and get reinforced by peers doing other things. There's an opportunity in there for Erie. And so I thank our audience for watching. I thank the people who have given comments and questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Raven to draw this to a conclusion.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jessica. This was a very enlightening presentation, and thank you, Sean, for joining us today. And
Thank
thank
you
you,
both.
Andy, of course, as always. And always thank you to the audience for joining in. And if you have any more questions, feel free to email me at clark@jeserie.org, and we'll drop that email in the comment section. Folks, for more information about the JES, including how to register for additional events, please visit jeserie.org for more info, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, LinkedIn, and of course, YouTube as well. This presentation will be up on our website soon and on YouTube. For the Jefferson Educational Society, I'm Raven Clark. Thanks for listening and learning with us.
Take care.